So it's my pleasure to introduce Nik. Nik is the Vice President of APAC Sales at Confence. Nik's responsible for helping organizations build on their security strategy throughout the APAC region by helping make humans part of the solution. In every company, he will be helping deal with cyber threats. It's my pleasure to introduce Nik.
Thank you very much. Just one quick correction. It's Cofence, not Confence, but that's all right. It does look like there's an M in there somewhere. And I know I'm the last presentation before coffee break, so I'm going to try to keep this as light as possible and also as fast as possible. So if I'm going too fast, just tell me to slow down. I am a Greek who speaks too fast, so sorry about that. Now, for those that don't know, we used to be called FishMe. We changed our name in February 2018 to Cofence, and we changed our name because predominantly FishMe as a company, we were the first guys to get into the security awareness program. So we were the first company to educate customers, simulate them on phishing type attacks. And FishMe was a good name that told people what we did. We fished them. That's what we were doing as an organization. But we changed in February 2018 because we have a very large global footprint of customers. Sorry, too soon. We have a large footprint of global customers, and those guys were telling us they needed more from us than what we were doing from a phishing perspective. So we really started to develop new tools, more tools to really help people from a phishing perspective to stop phishing attacks. And we changed our mission when we changed our name, and our mission is to enable the world to stop phishing attacks in their tracks. And we do that from a collaborative and a cooperative defense program. So the CO is for the collaborative or cooperative, and the fence is for defense, although the Americans spell fence with an S, so that's why it's Cofence with an S, not Cofence with a C. So today we're going to talk about a few uncomfortable truths. We're going to, and we've gone through these truths with all our customers that we manage globally. One of the things this slide is telling us, and this is taken from the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report, and there's lots of reports that say very similar things, that phishing is the % vector for attacks into organizations. So this is saying that phishing and pretexting represent 98% of social incidents and 93% of breaches. But emails are the things that get into our customers' organizations and they cause those breaches. Now, as mentioned, we talk to a lot of enterprise customers across the world, and because of that, we have good relationships with different stakeholders within the organization. And our main goal is to understand the needs of each of those stakeholders that we deal with. From a security awareness perspective, we need to understand what their objectives are and how we can help build them a program to better defend against the types of attacks that are out there. And so they can build a campaign to launch into their system to test their users. And the CISOs and executives, they really want to stop phishing. So their main goal is to understand why it's happening and where to put the resources within an organization. And obviously the security operation teams, they're the ones that are getting all this information. They need visibility on how to control each of those attacks that are happening in that organization. But we believe there's another stakeholder that is critical to the team, and that's the end user. So that's the people, the staff in your organisation. We believe they're a #1 stakeholder to defend against phishing attacks that are coming into your organisation. And because of that, we've started to look at some uncomfortable truths, things that our customers don't necessarily want to always admit to, but they have over the last few years. And because they're admitting to them, we're addressing them up front. And the first uncomfortable truth is, no matter how good your perimeter defences are or your perimeter security, malicious emails still reach the inbox. And we saw that 96% of attacks start from a phishing email. So we know that all our companies that we serve, they heavily invest in technology, and we do as well. We've got the secure email gateways, we have all our security perimeter defences in place, and every organisation we talk to does that as well. They put those in. But those technologies really, they do a great job in stopping the known threats that are out there. But phishing attacks are evolving and they're changing so often that sometimes it's not always easy to use just technology to stop these phishing campaigns that come in. If we were to look at the phishing landscape that exists out there, so we run a phishing defense centre, So we have a large number of customers that we manage everything for them. So we send out the campaigns, we look at all the emails that they report back, and that goes into our Phishing Defence Centre, which is based in the USA. And that Defence Centre gives us so much information that we can look at and prepare ourselves for the types of attacks. And you know, the phishing landscape as it stands at the moment, there's a lot of different things out there, from a malware, ransomware, Trojans. I mean, ransomware was very popular in Australia about a year and a bit ago, sort of died down a little bit now, but they're still attacking organisations using malwares of different type. Sorry, is my hair okay? The other type of attacks that are out there is a credential phishing, and I heard Trustwave today, they were talking about it's popular, it's out there. Credential phishing is a big attack that's happening in the marketplace, but we're also seeing a huge rise in the spear phishing, or the business email compromise phishing. We're seeing that increase quite significantly. And when we think about those bottom two, the credential phishing and the business email compromise, or BEC attacks, they're really hard to defend against just using technology. So if malware came into your system, it comes with a payload, it comes with information that you can use technology to stop. But these type of emails, when they come in, they look benign, they look safe. They just come in from your normal mail servers, and you think these are easy to deal with, so technology won't stop them. But they're actually very threatening to the organisation. The other thing that we look at when we look at the threat landscape is there's two groups. If we look at that big circle in the middle, there's two types of groups that are causing the most havoc in the market. We put them into two high-level groups. The first one is the organised criminal groups, and they're really responsible for the large crimeware attacks that are happening across the world today, and they're very financially motivated, and they really do those large botnet-style attacks. And they're also selling in the dark web phishing kits and ransomware as a service. So that's the number one group that is targeting organisations today. And then the other side, right at the bottom, is the nation-state sponsored groups, and they're really the groups like the APTs, Lazarus and Cozy Bears, and they're more geopolitically focused in trying to attack maybe even some government espionage type attacks. And now those two groups create the toolbox that exists in the middle. So the middle of our screen there, you can see the different types of tools that the criminals are using to try and attack each of the organisation. Now, we're seeing probably growth in two of those areas. In the probably 11 o'clock area, you'll see file sharing. So this is an attack that we're seeing that's quite prevalent in the marketplace today. So most technologies, as we mentioned, can detect malware. But if you sent a link to a Google Box or Google Drive or a Dropbox or any of those type of file sharing sites that a lot of companies use today, that link will come in because it's a known, it might be a service that you're using. You might subscribe to Dropbox. So if it's a known link, it'll come into the inbox, it'll sit within your user's email, and you might have staff click on that link, therefore creating quite a big attack. And the other one that we're seeing a sharp increase is probably about 3 o'clock, and that's the IP geolocation awareness. And basically that's where they're sending attacks, predominantly malware attacks, that will only work in the geolocation that it's targeted to work in. And we saw an example of that came into our Phishing Defence Centre a little while ago. So that's based in the US, but reporters were reporting an attack from Brazil, and they were sending it to our PDC. And our Phishing Defence Centre were looking at that email. They couldn't really get anything to happen for them because they were based in the US. But everything about that email looked like a fish. It looked like a fish, it smelled like a fish, but they couldn't get it to react in the way that the Brazilians were saying that it was reacting. So then our analyst changed his machine to I think a Brazilian IP address, and then he was able to download that malware, and he was able to see the information in there. It wasn't executing, so that frustrated him a little bit, but he was able to see the malware. He then pulled that malware apart. Inside the malware, he was able to see that it was also requiring a Portuguese keyboard to go along with it. So he changed his keyboard to a Portuguese keyboard, and then that malware executed and did exactly what it was supposed to do. So there's some pretty large attacks that are coming into the market. Now the criminals know that if they just send malware, technology will stop it. Well, predominantly technology will do a good effort in trying to stop it. So they're using this toolbox in the middle to ensure that it's not stopped and it gets through to your user's inbox. So we need to make sure that we stay on top of that as much as possible. And that really brings us on to our second uncomfortable truth, and that's you can't defend against attacks you cannot see. So, if you think about technology, trying to stop what's in the marketplace, if it doesn't know, it's not a known threat, or it can't see the threat within there, then it'll get into the inbox. And what we want to do is make sure that the SOC gets visibility of the different types of attack that comes into the inbox. And when we talk about visibility, from a phishing perspective, we're talking about two types of visibility. So we look at it through, we call them lenses. So the one on your left, the blue one, that's threats that already exist outside in the wild. So this is stuff that we know about. We might work with peer groups, we might be in the banking industry or energy industry, and we're talking with peer groups. We know about different ransomware attacks or different types of attacks that are out there, and we stay across those and we do whatever we can to defend against them. But the red lens is the one that we really need to make sure that we are focused on, because the red lens is threats inside the network. This has bypassed everything that you already have in place, and it's reached your inbox. And we call those threats clear and present danger, because this is danger that's in your inbox. It's already happening as we speak. I was talking to someone yesterday, and he said that they have an attack that happens every time the CEO goes away or goes on a business meeting. And that's because a criminal has visibility of that. They're already in your system, they're aware, they've got into your system, and they're just watching what's happening, and then they create those BEC attacks from within the organisation to send emails from the CEO who says, hey, I'm away, can you pay this bill? And the finance department know he's away, and then they send that bill. So these guys have already got in. So they're the type of lenses that we're using, and when we're using that red lens in our PDC, we get to see some interesting information from our customers that we're managing and have been managing over the last few years. And I mentioned earlier that we are managing those customers through that Phishing Defence Centre, or PDC. So in there we manage about 2 million end user mailboxes. And those mailboxes that we're managing, these customers have been with us for a long period of time, and they're well conditioned to look for what phishing emails are. They're also well conditioned to report that email. So we have a plugin that they can use, and they can report that email. So these are customers that we work with very regularly. They do lots of campaigns. They try and educate their staff as much as possible. If they see something, they know to report it. But even those, we see that when they report it, there's 1 in 7 emails that have been reported that contains a malicious content of some sort. And that's quite scary when we think about it, because it's a significant volume of emails. We've got 2 million end users with emails coming in, and they're reporting as much as possible. So it's a pretty big volume. But the important thing that we need to remember that our PDC is only seeing the emails that have been reported by our customers after technology failed to stop it. So it gets into the inbox and they need to act on it. So whilst technology is doing a great job stopping that volume of coming in, there are still malicious emails making it through to that inbox. So we need to make sure that we make humans more sensitive, or make them part of our sensors within the network to help protect against what's out there. So of those emails, those 2 million odd users that have come in, what have we seen? Well, last year, this is a full year that we saw through our PDC. We saw 55,404 credential harvesting attack emails that had come through. These are the emails that had been reported via those 2 million users. 27,500 campaigns leveraging cloud services. The bottom one is a bit scary because it says 4,152, but I only updated this 2 days ago. The number before was at the end of Q3, and that was only just over 1,100. So we've gone from 1,100 to 4,000 attacks in that BC space in less than 3 months. So it's quite a significant number of attacks that are hitting our customers and then coming through to our PDC. And I'm not trying to bash any technology, but remember, technology didn't grab this on the way through. So companies, they know that there's a problem out there, and they need to understand that they need to put something in place. They need to try and protect against the type of attacks. They need to educate their users. So it leads us on to our next uncomfortable truth. They know that they need to put something in place, but even the best security awareness program in the world will never deliver a 0 click rate. And I want to just pause on that for a sec, because some of our competitors go out in the market and they say, you know, you take our program and you drive your click rate down to 0% and you're saved. well, you're not saved. Someone will always click or open an email that they shouldn't open. Even if you educate your staff, some staff move on, you bring in new people, you have to re-educate them. By the time you get them recognised or get them to ability to recognise a phish, it'll still happen. They'll still click on those links. But what we're trying to get companies to understand is this is a real statement. You will never get zero. So what we need to deal with is the real problem. And the real problem is real phish. That's the real problem. The real phish that are making it into your inboxes, not the simulations that we do, not the awareness campaigns that we do. We need to deal with the real phish that make it into that inbox. And we want organisations to understand and agree with us that they are being phished. Regardless of what type of organisation, criminals are going to phish them. And when they're phished, they need to be able to respond quickly. How do I respond to the attack that's just happened into my organisation? And then how do I best mitigate that attack and reduce the risk to my organisation? So that's what we're trying to get companies to understand. And we have a lot of competitors in the marketplace that say, you know, if you drive that click rate down, I mentioned before, you can get it down to zero, or as low as possible to zero, and that's going to be your saviour. But it won't happen. You know, in the last 4 years, we do a lot of campaigns. There's over 50 million simulation emails sent from our company just in the last 4 years. So 50 million emails that have gone out as simulation emails to companies that are well aware of the problem. And we see that even though the susceptibility rate or that click rate is reducing, it's flattening off over the last years. I think we've started our quarter one, so January, February, March, we're at 11.5%. So it's really just flattening off. So 11.5% of most individuals in companies will click on a simulation attack. So it doesn't matter what people say about reducing that rate, you will still get people click. And the interesting thing is if we think about a company the size of maybe 2,000, so let's just take a small organisation of about 2,000 individuals, 11.5% means that around about 220, 230, somewhere in that space, will click on an email. When you think about that's less than the people in this room are clicking on or opening up an email that could potentially be suspicious. And if they click on it, they enter the information, they could cause so much havoc to your company, to your endpoints can be compromised. So that leads us on to our next uncomfortable truth. People say if they're clicking on it, users are the problem. But we're saying users are not the problem. Users can be educated and employed to be part of your network defense system. And we use this slide to show that. So that red slide on the top left-hand side, that was a slide we mentioned before. So that's showing that the clicking rate is coming down. So it's starting to decline and it's flattening off. As over that same period of time, we've been educating customers that they need to use, or they need to be in a position where they're reporting. So they need to understand that the behaviour we're giving them is if an email comes through and it looks fishy, should I click on it? Or what should I do? You know, some of the questions we tell our customers to ask their staff is, was I expecting this email? You know, I just got an email from the CEO saying, hey, can you please transfer $1 million into this account to pay for this? You know, is that my level, or should I be sending $1 million based on the CEO? Does it look like the email was intended for me? Should I really be clicking on the link or opening an attachment? Is there other things I could be doing before I click on that sort of stuff? And it's really the same sentence. If it smells like a fish, then need to act on it. So we're trying to get our users to look at that email, sniff it. If it doesn't pass the sniff test, report it. And we have a little button that sits in a lot of different clients. It looks like that, but a lot smaller. It's a little fish. And all they need to do is click on that fish. So once they click on it, that'll grab all the relevant information. It'll grab the headers, footers, any attachments, and it'll send it to wherever you want to send it to as your organisation. You can send it to your own IT department, you can send it to a SOC, you can send it to an MSSP, or you can send it to us as an organisation, and we will manage that information. And as soon as we get that information, or as soon as you get visibility on that type of attack, then that'll help save and mitigate a whole lot of issues. So left-hand side is clicking, right-hand side is reporting. The line underneath that is your resiliency rate, and we get that number by dividing the number of people reporting divided by the number of people clicking. And when you divide that, it really, you can see at the bottom that you become more resilient. And in actual fact, if you look at it, it says 1.86. So for every one person clicking, that's the left-hand side, 1.86% is reporting. So the more people are reporting, the more defensive you become as an organisation, because the criminals know they only need one person in your organisation to click on a link to compromise your organisation. They know that. That's why they keep changing that wheel, that toolbox. They keep trying different attacks. They just need one person to click. Conversely, we only need one person to report. Once you've reported the problem, the SOC, MSP, whoever is managing this for you, has the ability to act on that information. So the question that we always pose is there. We always ask our customers, which trend do you think has the greatest impact on improved security posture? Do you think it's just the click rate alone, or is it the click rate with the reporting rate, which gives you your resiliency level? And that's what we focus on, that resiliency side. So, there's another uncomfortable truth from our perspective, and we're only talking about our customers. Most organisations are unable to effectively respond to phishing attacks. And we know that many organisations we work with, they've got great operational teams and they do a great job in dealing with the different types of attacks that are in the market, but they're not really equipped to understand the types of attacks that are coming in. They know there's a problem. They've created work groups within their organisation to resolve the problem, but they're not really in a position to do that. And having a good phishing defence program in place, there's lots of really good benefits around there. So what we're trying to say is get that collaborative approach. When the executives and CISOs are talking about understanding the risk, get them working with the security awareness teams. Get the security awareness teams working with your security operation teams. Because your security operation teams, when you're clicking reporting, they'll see the real type of threats that are coming into your organisation. So the SOC needs to feed that information back down to your security awareness team, and then they can create campaigns based on real live threats that you are seeing as an organisation. It could be BEC, it could be compromised credential information. But whatever real live threat you're seeing, the SOC will see, they can feed that back to your security awareness team, and then they can feed that back up into the executives and the CISOs to create the resources needed within your organisation to drive the right response. But we are a big believer in engaging the end user and educating them, sorry, I lost my mouse, educating them to report. Because the SOC really can only work on information that they see coming into them. They can only act on when you've sent them that information. And rather than just send standard templates, so here's a template that lots of organisations have pre-built into the awareness program, really bespoke it to ways that are affecting your company. So as we mentioned before, we really want to create a collaborative, collective approach when we're looking at threats that are hitting that inbox. And if we understand the problem and we understand that there's real fish that are coming into your company, remember 1 in 7 in our environment, that for those managed customers are real fishes that are coming into your organisation. So we need customers to grasp the fact that the real fish is the real problem, and we want to work on that. So if we imagine a fish hits, that's the red part there, is your organisation ready to understand what happens once it's hit? Are your staff trained enough to do the sniff test to really understand, is this a suspect email? And if it is a suspect email, what am I supposed to do? You know, many companies have a process in place, and some people stick it on top of their laptop. So if they get an email, they've got to copy that email and forward it as an attachment and send it to someone. But most users are a bit lazy, so if they see something, they'll just delete it. Deleting doesn't help your company. It doesn't help what you need to do, which is why we created this little fishy button that'll sit in Outlook, Gmail, Lotus Notes, whatever you use. And then you can report all that information directly straight to your SOC team, which obviously helps. So if we were to look at across that journey, the problem is hit, your staff has suspected the email, they've reported the email, then what do you do with all those emails that are coming in? We need to make sure that the users are aware of, your SOC is aware of the different types of emails that are coming in and prioritise the right ones, so you can then move on to the analytical side and understand the problem to then mitigate the problem. And a lot of companies out there, they pen test or they do awareness testing once, maybe twice a year to make sure that, do we have a problem? And 9 times out of 10 they do. But we're saying get a real program in place, and phish your customers, as in simulation phish your staff as often as possible, so they become aware of the issue, they report more, and then your SOC can handle that in a much larger system. Because having a system that can cut through all the noise is critical. You know, when you're reporting information into that report button and then it goes into prioritize, are your SOCs capable of reducing the noise? We have a lot of customers that will click on that button purely because they want to manage their inbox, so it's easier just to click on that, it deletes it and moves it on. But that just creates a lot of noise for your SOC. And in actual fact, when we mention 1 in 7 emails that come into our PDC are malicious, that means 6 out of 7 that are coming in are not malicious. So that's, again, a big volume that comes through. So you want to have a system in place that allows you to prioritize and reduce the noise. So for the spam email that does make it through, create rules within that system that gets rid of the noise, so you're only looking at the real priority emails. We also need to have a system in place that can recognize the credibility of those people reporting. So one of the tools that we have, let's say I'm a known spam clicker and I'm only sending rubbish through the inbox. I get a status and my status is very low. So every time I report it, when you're looking at the dashboard, they'll go, this clown, he doesn't know what he's doing. So we won't open that cluster of emails that he sent through. But we might have somebody else that's very regular hitting and suspecting high levels of phishing emails that are coming through. So you can have a system in a dashboard that highlights that high, and that means you can prioritize that cluster over all the rest of the rubbish. Our system also can collate all that information together. So even though it's one attack, they might just change a few little things along the way. It'll collect and gather all those together. So you're dealing with the problem as a cluster, making it easier to prioritize than reading 300 emails entering in that inbox. So we need to make sure that we're building a system that can help you move along this kill chain along the bottom as quickly as possible to get to that mitigation area to stop that attack coming through. So let's go on to the next slide, which is a little example that we had recently last year of a global customer in the USA. So it's a large medical organisation and they use our technology. They use it very regularly. They have everything in place. They do simulations very regularly. I think they're up at about once a month, but then repeat offenders get done a lot more than that during that time. So they've got 12, 14 programs that come out every year. They click the button very regularly. If they see something, they click on it, sends all the information through to our phishing defense. So they're very conditioned to understand what a phishing email looks like. They're very conditioned to report that email. But what they did is a nasty phish came through, and this phish that hit the organisation looked very real. It came from their CEO, and it was trying to get payroll information from them, but it looked really real. Every single person that was conditioned to read that email looked at it and thought, this is a real email, so we need to act on it. So, but there was a link. Within the link, there was a fake 365 Office login page, and people clicked on that link. Actually, thousands of people clicked on that link within a very short period of time. But what happened was, with the thousands that had clicked on it, thousands had also reported it to our PDC. So at 11:48, the email came through to our PDC. At 11:49, we had already received the email and started to go through the prioritization of it. And we realized pretty quickly, well, within 19 minutes, I think was the total time, that is a real phish. It was a real problem, and they were trying to get that payroll information from them. So by 12:07, we were able to go back to the customer, tell them this is a real attack, and mitigate that whole problem. No money left that organisation. No attack happened to any of the users in that environment. That's our 19-minute one. We've just recently put on our website a 10-minute one, so it's a little bit faster, but the attack was a little bit different. So these are the types of tools that you need to have in place to ensure that you can shut down an attack in a very short amount of time. I think Trustwave mentioned before, it might have been someone else that I was listening to, the average time of the criminal is in a network in Australia is in months. So they're inside your network for months before organisations find out about it. And a lot of ways, as we mentioned, they get in is through these emails. So to be able to work through this kill chain from left to right in a quick period of time will get them out of your network as quick as possible. Remember, you only need one person to report something for that to be worked on. So I said I'll be quick, so to summary, we believe that users are not the problem. We believe that with the right campaign in place, you can educate and ensure that your staff are completely aware of what the real problem is. And the real problem is that real fish entering your inbox, bypassing all the technologies that you have in place. That's the real problem that we need to address. And having the right awareness campaign, creating a reporting culture, and giving visibility to your SOC in very quick time, you then can create an easily intelligent phishing defence program. Thank you very much.